Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Hobbies and Happiness podcast at Disney Lorcana podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dan.
I'm Jim, and let's go over Rule Zero and the social contract.
All right. Now, before we get into it, I would feel remiss if I didn't mention we have already talked about the Rule Zero conversation on our podcast before. I don't have what episode number it is right in front of me, but you should go look back in our catalog to find it so you can kind of see what we've talked about before. But this conversation is going to relate to the social contract, also known as the Rule Zero conversation, and how we can apply it to Disney Lorcana, specifically multiplayer formats in Disney Lorcana. Now, before we get into it, we got to go over the usual stuff. Number one, hey, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, you should, because then you can get some access to some pretty sweet visuals. I mean, not my face. Definitely not my face. But hey, go to there. Yeah, that is a sweet visual. Thank you, Jim. That is definitely a sweet visual. So if you want to check out the podcast on YouTube, head over to youtube.com/hobbiesandhappiness. Check the link down below in the description or the podcast notes. That way you can find that. And if you are not yet, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on bell notifications so you can be notified when we release more episodes and more Disney Lorcana content in the future. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and especially for the 70% of you who watch our content and are not subscribed, let's fix that right now. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. All right. And if you like the audio version, if you like listening to us in your ear holes, subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we're probably there. So don't forget, subscribe to the podcast in your podcasting platform of choice to get your weekly dose of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast. And finally, if you would like to support us, if you would like to financially support us, did you know that we recently launched our Patreon? That's right. You can subscribe to that over on patreon.com/hobbies and happiness. Again, that is patreon.com/hobbies and happiness. Check the links down below in the description. And we've got about 3 different tiers of memberships that you can join at there, and check the descriptions. You can find out more about those different tiers. But we also want to take this opportunity to thank all of our lovely patrons. You get some sweet access to some behind the scenes content. I just recorded a couple days ago behind the scenes update video that we like to do every week for our patrons. And many of those updates are available to our free patrons. So again, if you want to get access to some sweet extra content, that is patreon.com/hobbies and happiness. All right. Let's get into the episode today. Jim, how much do you enjoy the Rule Zero conversation?
Having to go through it quite a couple times, it just gets easier and easier every time. But for the people that don't know about it, it's sometimes just a little pain in the butt to have to go through it quite so many times.
Now, the fact that we've touched on this topic before, if you haven't listened to that episode, I'd encourage you to go check it out. And again, I do feel like all of our podcast episodes before we've really dove headfirst into Lorcana and the Lorcana community, we were like figuring it all out along the way. And, I think now that we're applying everything to Lorcana, we're very much more focused on what we're talking about. And specifically for this conversation, the social contract and Rule Zero, being able to now apply it to Lorcana, I feel like it's going to take on a new light, right? Because there's a lot of folks within the Disney Lorcana community who've really never even thought of or heard of the Rule Zero conversation, or really understand what the social contract is and how it can be applied to Lorcana. Now, again, the current state of Disney Lorcana, I know we've talked about this before, the current state really is competitively focused, right? And that's cool. That's totally fine. part of our goals as a channel, Jim and I really want to hammer home and expand multiplayer formats for the game. That's our heart. That's what we're focused on, and we really want to do that. We really want to grow the community and grow the game from the social aspect, okay? So I think in order to grow that game, we really have to have this conversation of, okay, what is Rule Zero? What's a social contract? And how can we apply this to Lorcana to make it a better social experience for all players? So let's dive in. So it's the Rule Zero conversation. What we're going to talk about what it is, why it's important, and then towards the end of the episode, we're going to talk about some applications and how we can apply this concept to the current state of multiplayer Disney Lorcana. So first of all, what is it? What is it? Jim, off the top of your head quickly, okay, if I asked you to define the social contract, what would you say? How would you define the social contract to someone who's never heard of it before in the context of Disney Lorcana? How would you define it?
I would say people essentially sitting down, talking about what it is they're looking for and whatever the game it is that they're about to play, and the overall experience that is, essentially going to be happening.
Mm-hmm. Like what experience they're looking to get out of when they sit down, right?
Yeah.
Right. So before we actually talk about a definition, because I did look up the origins of social contract and Rule Zero and tried to find a definition, because again, if you've listened to the podcast before, excuse me, I kind of like to do that. I'm a very analytical person, and I try to defining terms is something that I think is important because, again, it helps if you're in a conversation. It really does help set the ground rules, right? The playing field of what you're talking about, right?
And that's the funny part is here. You're essentially setting up the social contract.
Correct. Correct.
For the talk.
Exactly. And that's literally it. Okay, podcast done. We can go home.
All right. See you guys.
That's
Wait, Dan, we are home.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What are you doing? Go home. It's all over.
Go away now. Okay, all right. So what is it? I've got my notes here, and the first thing I have written down, it's the social contract. Again, there's that term that all players discuss beforehand, and they agree that they'll participate in prior to the start of the game. So you sit down, y'all have a discussion. All right, we're going to make some informal agreements between all of us here of what type of game are we going to have? Are we going to have a high-level competitive game? Are we looking to play something more casual and just chill? Or are we all going to be discard? Like, what are we looking to do? Okay. That's on a most basic level. That's what it is. Okay. Conversation between all players, discussing what kind of game they're looking to play. And on top of that, like what types of rules they're looking to play by. If you've got any house rules, maybe you're playing multiplayer where you decide the first player gets to draw. That could be something that's part of it. It really all of those discussions, right, are what embody the Rule Zero conversation, right? There's definitely more that goes into it. The next thing I have written down, it always helps when you're looking to play the same or similar format, right? What you want to do, you want to keep as many variables consistent as you can in a group setting, okay? So like if the example that I have here, right, is don't be looking to play Pokemon at a Disney Lorcana event. You won't have much success. Okay. Now, why do I bring that up, right? Well, if you're looking to play a certain game, right, you want to be surrounded by others who are looking to play a similar type of game. Okay. Let's bring this to Magic, right, for a quick second. There have been many conventions over through the history of Magic the Gathering. There are different types of conventions. There's conventions that were specifically focused for Commander. There are conventions that are specifically focused on the Standard. There's many, many different types of conventions. Okay. Now, the state of Magic now is Commander is extremely popular. So you would be able to, I would venture to guess, if you were to go to any Magic convention and you're like, hey, I got some Commander decks, who's looking to play Commander? You're probably going to find a bunch of players who have Commander decks and are looking to play, right?
There's even some people that say, I don't play Magic, I play Commander.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They'll be like, oh, what card game you? Oh, I play Commander. All right,
Yep.
I get it. Yes, it's Magic, but it's not.
Right.
It's different.
Right. So, like, if you were to go to a Lorcana event and you had a Pokemon deck, like in my example, could you find somebody who has a Pokemon deck? Maybe. You possibly could, but I doubt you're going to have very much success, right? And just like you go to a Magic event, hey guys, I got Lorcana decks. Who's looking to play Lorcana? You probably ain't going to find much success. Okay, so I bring this up because I think it's an important thing to have, because the first step is that rule 0 conversation, right? The social contract. But before you even get there, you want to find like-minded people who are looking to play the same game. So while, yes, social contract rule 0 is what's first, you'd need to think a little bit before that. Like, some pre-planning makes sense. And honestly, you really don't think about it, because I'm looking to play this thing. You're most likely going to go to an event where you're going to have you're going to try and put yourself in the position to be successful for that thing being playing Lorcana or whatever you're looking to play. Okay. So I think some people listening are probably like, well, Dan, duh. That's kind of, yeah, I know. I understand. Okay. But I think it's an important thing to talk about. So, okay. So let's now talk about the social contract. Okay. I do have here, we've got time for a short history lesson. We've got a time for a short history lesson. All right. So, I did some research into the social contract. Okay.
I didn't know that it went this far. I had no idea.
Jim had no idea. So my research took me to Encyclopedia Britannica. Okay. So I think in order to better understand Rule 0 and the Rule 0 conversation, it would help to touch on and understand what is meant by the concept of the social contract. Because to me, Rule 0 and the social contract, essentially, they basically go hand in hand. I think the Rule 0 conversation is like the practical means by which you go about implementing a social contract. Okay. So the term social contract actually is originated in political philosophy. A definition that I found was it is an actual or hypothetical agreement. It's an actual or hypothetical compact or agreement between the ruled or between the ruled and their rulers, defining the rights and duties of each. Okay. So I'm pretty sure it's very much most of our current systems and forms of government are formed. Well, they are some form of a social contract. Okay. Like very early stages of social contracts. And then where we are now in our current system of government has its early bases in some form of social contract. Okay.
A wise man did once say, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Okay, now let's hear it. Jim. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe it should just be both. Maybe there should be kind of, give and take.
True. Now, can you do it in the voice of JFK?
No, I don't think so.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. All right, that wasn't terrible, but I feel like if I practice, I could probably do that a lot better.
I could do the Marilyn Monroe happy birthday. That's about it.
Let's hear it.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. No.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so in going through Britannica, which I'll post these links in the description of the video or the podcast episode if you want to take a look, because there's some interesting information in here. I always like learning stuff that I didn't know before, and this is one of those things. So if you're interested, we'll post the links. But a good summary that I found here, it says, by comparing the advantages of organized government with the disadvantages of the state of nature, or basically the way that things are in the world, they showed why and under what conditions government is useful and ought therefore to be accepted by all reasonable people as a voluntary obligation. These conclusions were then reduced to the form of a social contract, from which it was supposed that all the essential rights and duties of citizens could be logically deduced. One thing also, too, if you noted there, that I took note of when reading that, it mentions reasonable people. In the United States of America, a lot of our court systems have their bases. Jim's looking around there. I think there's.
I got a cat by my feet.
There's a cat. Yep. If you ever hear in court a lot of the standards by which something is deemed either legal or illegal, or a lot of the standards are based on what a reasonable person would suspect. Okay. And I see that here, right? They talk about reasonable people. And then you can have the discussion, obviously, well, what is a reasonable person, right? You want to have that discussion, go for it. I just find it interesting that I see a correlation there, reasonable people. Okay. Now, some early philosophers who had differing theories on social contract, two English philosophers, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. If you're listening, you're probably familiar. These are names that if you were paying attention in history class, you may have heard these names. Thomas Hobbes and John Locke are English philosophers, and the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Those are two early proponents. Well, not proponents, but they each had different philosophies on the social contract. Really, it was how the government or the rulers, how the rights of the ruled pertained to the government. So they had different opinions and philosophies there. Which again, if you want to learn and read more about those, we'll put the links down below. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about
real quick. I never really noticed how much John Locke and Jean-Jacques names sound a whole lot alike.
Coincidence? I think not. What's that from? Can you know that's from?
Coincidence. I think I don't remember off the top of my head.
And the way that specifically the way it was said. Coincidence? I think not. Now you've probably never seen it. It is a Pixar movie. Ratatouille. You ever see Ratatouille?
Oh, yes, I have seen it.
Oh, you have? Wow. Yes, put one on the board for Jim, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, dude.
He saw one. No way. Okay. So there's a definition here that I found. So this definition on social contract is from Oxford Languages. So it states, an implicit agreement among the members of a society to cooperate for social benefits. Looky there. Social benefits. We're talking about a social format for Disney Lorcana, and there's that word, social benefits. Coincidence? I think not. It is a perfect definition for our application here for multiplayer formats for Lorcana. Everyone playing these formats, multiplayer formats, is doing so partly, I would probably argue, because again, I can't speak for everybody, but I'd probably argue that everyone playing multiplayer formats is doing so partly for the social benefits of the format. So in order to best maximize these social benefits, start with a Rule Zero conversation. You start there because you want to maximize those benefits that not only you are looking to have, but everyone in your play group is looking to have as well. The last thing I have written down here, and I mentioned this earlier, but that definition mentions social contract as being an implicit agreement. Implicit means unspoken, means something that's not discussed. It's just understood. It's the it's like you and you I'm sure we've all done this before, right? But you sit down at a table and everybody just looks. You nod at each other because you all know what you need to do. And you sit Jim's at the table. You all nod. And it's understood that you take out Jim first. That's the implicit agreement.
Or it's if someone's about to pop off, you better hope Jim saves the day.
That's true.
How many times that happened, Dan? Someone's about to win, and you're like, Jim, you got anything? And you stop this.
Because Jim plays mono blue. Talrand, save us. Talrand, you're our only hope.
Help me, Talrand. You're our only hope.
So Rule 0 attempts to turn an implicit agreement into an explicit discussion and conversation. So that's where I think the two are different. Social contract being implicit because it's not spoken. It's you're a part of a community. Then here is what your duties are as a part of that community. If you are a player, if you're playing multiplayer Disney Lorcana, it's understood, it's implicitly understood that you will or you will not do certain things as part of that community. Rule 0 turns that implicit agreement and says, okay, let's actually have a discussion before we sit down. That way we can best understand what the table's looking to do, and that way we can ensure that everyone sitting down is going to have a good time. Okay. So that's the definitions. I liked doing that. That's always fun for me. Jim looks at the outline and is like, dude, what in the world? Why are we going over all this stuff, dude?
Like, man, this is 4 pages, Dan. I'm used to 1.5.
Oh, man. All right. So I do think, though, that right now being 1 year in of the game, which, dude, the game is a baby. The game hasn't even learned how to walk yet. Yeah. Like, for real. Like, the game has not even learned how to walk yet. So we are kind of getting a little bit, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, which isn't a bad thing, because I think what we're trying to do is prepare the community for,
we're trying to lead it.
Yeah.
Lead it into the path we know that it will eventually end up.
Right. So yeah, I think now can kind of be maybe like a little bit of an awkward time to have this type of conversation because it's so early. And in addition to that, there really is no official multiplayer format outside of core constructed, but with more players.
Yeah.
The only official stuff about multiplayer is, hey, the cards say each opponent or all players or what have you, which is all fine and well and good. But really, Ravensburger and Lorcana hasn't come out and said, hey, we have a format that's going to be really great with 4 players. That doesn't exist yet. And so we're hoping that by having these conversations, we can, spur those discussions and then hopefully lead the game into having some multiplayer formats. Now, there are multiplayer formats that are still being figured out by the community. Like I said, this game is just a year old. And as multiplayer formats begin to grow and evolve, and then the player base starts to learn about them and finds out what it's like, these types of conversations will become easier. And what I mean is like the Rule 0 conversations, these types of conversations of, hey, what are you looking to play? Because like we mentioned earlier, when you have different formats, it's, hey, I have a deck, like I have a multiplayer deck, I have my competitive deck, or like if there is no official multiplayer format, because then it's like it's the same thing with like anything grassroots. anything grassroots, if it wants to take hold, there needs to be some larger apparatus that helps spur it on and then gets the word out there. And we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Again, I mean, Commander exploded, what, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I'd say roughly 5.
And Magic is more than 30 years old. Now,
Yeah.
do you know, I did not look this up, but do you know when Commander was first developed?
That
Do
I
you know
have.
that?
We're saying specifically Commander or EDH, like when it was
EDH.
Okay. Yeah, that I have no idea.
Okay. I mean, I know it was a while ago.
Yeah.
I know it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so for the Commander format to really just take off the way it has within the last 5 years, like,
Why do I want to say somewhere around like Legends? Because that's when they were utilizing the Elder Dragons. So I don't know if
Yeah.
it was roughly that time frame.
that would make sense.
Which I mean, Legends was a while.
That was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. And for those of you who don't know, the Commander format got started by a group of judges who wanted to do something different in between rounds.
Yeah.
And so they took the legendary dragons, who were were they originally in Legends? I always get wary of saying this stuff because I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it was Legends. Oh my goodness, 94.
94.
Legends was in 94.
Legends was in 94. That's crazy. Magic as a game released what, 91 or 93?
No, it was 93.
Yeah, 93. So
Yeah.
we're having, dude, that's crazy. We're having this discussion a year after Lorcana was a thing, and Legends really was a year after Magic was a thing. Wow. That's crazy.
Okay, so
Coincidence? I think not.
So just doing a quick little
Google search.
looking stuff up. Yeah, quick little search. However, the concept of EDH predates this commercial launch. Sheldon Mannery?
Sheldon Menery. Yep.
Who was introduced to EDH in 2002, developed the format further, wrote an article in 2004 on Star City Games, which then helped spread the word of EDH.
Yeah.
So, yes, Legends came out then, but it wasn't even until about 2002 that he was introduced to EDH. But that doesn't even mean that EDH still wasn't, a thing
still
since
wasn't
2000 or 01. Something along those lines.
Sheldon Menery, who passed away, I think, within the last year, was he is the godfather of Commander.
Yeah.
For you talk to anybody in that community, they will tell you what Sheldon did for Commander cannot be understated at all, and everybody basically calls him the godfather of Commander. So. I didn't know any of that history, the dates, because I didn't even think about it until now, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
but that's interesting.
It was last year he passed away.
Yeah. Yep. And then they did a secret layer in his honor. I believe that came out after he passed, actually. Some of his favorite cards. So, okay. So anyway, like we were talking about, Lorcana is still very, very young, and Lorcana's got a long way to go. And I'm excited. I am excited to see this game grow and evolve over time, and I'm excited to be really in the middle of it. Not saying like I want to be part of the growth, but because I do, I'm excited to just see it happen. Because that's because I was never able to do that for Magic. Yeah. Like I remember being a kid and I remember hearing about it, but I wasn't involved at all and I never played it. So to have that opportunity now, I think like is very, very cool, right? If you're a part of the Lorcana community, you've got a good seat. So like, don't forget that. I think, hold on to that and really just, understand that. So, okay. So, we talk about as multiplayer formats begin to grow, and as these formats grow, these conversations, Rule Zero, social contract, the Rule Zero conversations, they're going to become easier. Okay. So this is actually a good way to segue into why the Rule Zero conversation is important to have. So again, let's take a look at that definition from the Oxford Dictionary. An implicit agreement between members of a society to cooperate for social benefits. I love that it says that. Social benefits. We are looking to maximize the amount of fun we're about to have. Most of the time. I think anytime you start to get into something higher level, then that's something completely different.
Yeah.
But again, for some people, that's more fun. Jim, is that more fun? We were just talking about this beforehand. Is that more fun to you?
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Fun for Jim, it really is a zero-sum game. He wants
How
to have
dare you,
all
sir?
of it.
How dare you?
So that leads me into saying, there are different players have different meanings of fun. And I think
my fun is to get people involved.
Say that again?
I said my fun is to get people involved, whether or when it comes to Magic, right? Playing a control deck. Politically, I also play that. I also play Talran very politically.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Like you've said, hey, yo, this is going to be fun.
Correct.
Let's do this. Right.
Correct.
And it's like, if I know it's going to be fun or funny, we can make it work. Or I know someone's about to just win the game and it's like, hey, I'm not ready to not play anymore. Are you ready to not play anymore? Is that an other person? And then, I stop this.
Right.
I'm not just out here stopping every single thing from every single person so that way they have zero fun. I am very selective.
Unless it's the end of the game, then you do pull
That's
out
a different story, Dan.
Then you pull out all the stops.
That's a different story. When it comes down to that 1v1 situation.
When it comes down to 1v1, then you're like, all right, dude, I don't really care how much fun you're having because I want to win.
Yeah, I'm ending this game.
Right. And that is also where Lorcana is just so, dude, the multiplayer experience is so different. It is so different. And we're going to talk about it in future episodes for sure. But I mean, for playing as many multiplayer games as we have so early on, it's just, it really is. It's so screwy. It screws with my head so much, man.
Yeah.
Because I am so used to, okay, which we got to take out, everybody take out so-and-so.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we can't even do that. Okay, so how do I even play this now?
Yep.
It's so different. It's so weird. But it's fun learning it. It's fun learning how to play multiplayer in this game. It's so different and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Okay. So by having this Rule Zero conversation, right? We talk about different players, different types of players have different meanings and levels of fun. But by having the Rule Zero conversation, all players will know what each player is looking to do to achieve their own level of fun. One of my favorite creators, Disney Lorcana, is Rebecca Quests. We've had her on, I can't remember what episode of Multiplayer Madness, but if you've never saw it, go check it out. She played a mono Ruby lore drain deck. She did win that match. It was a lot of fun, but if you're familiar with her Instagram content, she has put out a lot of short pieces of content, and I know she's passionate about this, but really trying, and she is a new TCG player. Lorcana is her first TCG. She's never played TCGs before. So I would confidently say a lot of these concepts and a lot of these terms, she's new to. Right. But one thing that she's learned early on is there's different types of decks. There's different types of players and people like to play different decks. Yep. And that leads her into realizing there's different types of fun for everybody. There are so many different types of players. What's fun for one person may not necessarily be fun for somebody else. That's 100% true. And the way that you figure out what fun for somebody else is in these social settings is having this rule zero conversation. Okay. So,
there's one thing I'm not very excited for, and I don't know if it's ever going to come to Lorcana. I can't think of any cards that it is on for Lorcana.
okay.
Ink Destruction.
Ink destruction.
I don't think, aside from the Mufasa, the new one that gets you back ink.
I doubt we're going to see it.
I hope not.
I doubt we're going to see it. I do think I have a point in here talking about like fun and unfun stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll get to it. Let's see. I know it's in here.
The only reason I bring it up is because, like, discard's already one of those things, and like we were talking about the lore drain, and that can really delay a game.
Right.
And what's fun and ink destruction on top of the other two.
Nobody wants to play land destruction. Right.
All right. Yep. Next.
I highly doubt that's ever. If that came to Lorcana, if that ever came to Disney Lorcana, I would be extremely surprised.
Yeah.
Right.
In having ink destruction, Armageddon.
In having the conversations that we've had with Steve Warner, one of the game designers, and Ryan Miller, I don't think that's ever something that they would ever want to even consider.
Yeah.
Because part of the whole uninking thing is, turning a card uninkable is, this is just not an unfun thing that we don't want there to be a whole lot of. And okay, I don't want to get too much into it because I know we're going to talk about this even further. So we're going to bring this up again.
We'll get there.
We will get there. All right. So, okay. Excuse me. So, okay. Bringing this back to what's fun for different players, right? I really think a lot of this can be boiled down to two separate groups, which we've talked about extensively. Casuals and competitives, right? But let's break it down even further. So I wanted to do a fun or thematic build crowd. There's your casuals. I wanted to do something fun, or I wanted to build a thematic deck, which is super accessible in this game. It's so easy to do, and it's a lot of fun, right? Because that's fun for somebody. I want to build my Aladdin deck. I want to build a Sword in the Stone deck or whatever. And the more cards we get, the more versatility, the more diversity we're going to see in those different decks. I'm sure we're going to see Aladdin decks that are going to be like in 2 years, right? I'm excited to see how many different kinds of Aladdin decks that there's going to be. Okay. So you've got I wanted to build something fun or thematic. Okay. That's crowd one. Also known as your casuals. Because again, everybody, we all boil this down to the most basic terms possible. Okay. And we all do it subconsciously too. And so that's crowd A, which you're going to call your casuals. Right. Then you have I will beat you into the ground with my uber competitive deck crowd, or the competitives. And again, I think we talked about this last week. It's hey, you go to locals, you brought your fun deck, you brought your thematic deck, and locals, it's all competitive. Everybody has their meta decks, and then you lose because you bought a fun deck. It's not fun to lose. It's not fun to go 0-4 or 0-5 or however many rounds it is. I get it. I understand. I don't like it either. But I think those are your two crowds. Okay. Now, I do have here, this is a joke. It kind of is, but it's also kind of it's reality. Jim, is that not reality? Like, aren't those like the two groups? Like, again, and I don't say this to make fun of anybody. I don't say this to make fun of anybody. Yeah. I think that is a reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are also people in terms of like the 1v1 competitive scene that want to be competitive, right? They want to also be able to win, but then they also want to have that fun or thematic deck, right? So it's like you can turn brooms, right?
Yeah, you can.
You can make purple steel brooms, semi-competitive, and you could probably win. You could probably go like 4-0 at your locals,
Yeah.
right? And you can have a good time. You
Sure.
put brooms together, and maybe you can cut out like a couple fluff cards, put in like a little bit more spot removal, depending on what your meta is,
Mm-hmm.
and you could turn that fun idea into a more competitive
Mm-hmm.
deck and
Right.
still win.
And what does it take to do that? What does it take to do that, Jim? If somebody wanted to do that, what would be your advice to them? Because you're right. Like, I agree with you. You're correct.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a mindset thing. Like, you have to go from, hey, I want to do something fun. There's an additional step you got to go after that. It's okay. Your starting position is, hey, I got a fun idea. Cool. You start there. Next step is you think about your current metagame, your local metagame, and say, okay, what do people tend to play? How can I make this more consistent and more competitive?
Yeah.
Right. Like, what other advice would you give to him, Jim?
Oh man. It's difficult. But just be ready for your plan to not succeed.
That is so true.
Just be ready.
That's true. Yeah.
Don't get upset. Oh man, I didn't get the cards I really needed. My deck hates me. I got ink flooded. I got ink screwed. I'm utilizing the perfect percentage of inkable cards with uninkable cards.
This sounds like a personal attack, Jim.
Sorry, man. I'm not pointing fingers, even though I literally just pointed fingers. I'm sorry, man. It's just be prepared, mentally that yes, you're still building a fun deck and you're trying to make it competitive, but it's still starting at the idea of fun, and I'm trying to make it tier 2, tier 1.5, tier 1,
Right. It's important to understand what your goal is. If your goal is fun, okay, don't lose yourself along the way. But if your goal really is, I want to win, then I think you abandon it. Like, if your end goal is, I want to win, I think you abandon, okay, I want to do something fun. Then you think about it completely differently. I'm not saying you can't do something fun and win. That's not, I'm definitely not saying that, because that 100% is true.
There is another thing as well. There is the I'm looking to have fun with a competitive deck, and what you're able to do is find some little tweaks that you can make to the deck and put in those tech cards that you really like.
Yeah, to make it yours.
Exactly. You kind of make it yours, and you're like, I really think this card could be really good at my current or at my local game store. I'm going to try, you can even just cut down percentages. You don't have to completely take out a playset of, or like a full 2 of. It's like, all right, I'm going to cut one of this card, cut one of this card, and I'm going to put in 2 of these cards. Or, you take out 3 different things and you put in 3 copies of something. You still have that overall competitiveness. It's a little less consistent, but it gives you that little tweak, that little flair of your own.
Right. This does lead me into saying, like, as these formats grow and evolve, like the multiplayer formats grow and evolve, I do think it's going to help players like self-separate themselves into their own different spheres of like what they're looking, the fun that they're looking to have. Okay. Like, a great example of this is EDH and CEDH. You've got casual commander, and then it's casual commander and then competitive commander. And competitive commander is they're looking to win by, like, on turn 1, 2, or 3. Yeah, like, that's what CEDH is doing, is they're winning on turn 1, 2, or 3. Casual. So I just thought of this. One of the big differences between casual and competitive commander, casual wants to have a really long game. Competitive wants to have the shortest possible game ever.
Competitive wants to go for 1, 2, or 3 turns. Casual wants to go for 1, 2, or 3 hours.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is so true. So, yeah, the best way to maximize the amount of fun that you're going to have is to have and play with other like-minded players, with people who are also looking to do the same things that you're looking to do. And like, if that's something competitive, cool. Like that's totally fine. Right? But find those people. And that's why having multiple formats for different play styles is so good to have. Okay. So here's the thing that I have written down that we're going to talk about. It's important to attempt to reduce as much of the potential feels bad moments from the game if you can. And I think it's important to know it's potential feels bads. So I do think Ravensburger has shown thus far through both game design and OP structure that they want to reduce these moments and feelings as well. Look at Bucky, like the Bucky errata. Now, I personally think that was a wrong decision. I think they should have just banned the card outright and not errata it. Either ban it or restrict it. That's what I think. But that whole decision and their subsequent reasoning for said decision was it's unfun. Like, it shows you that that's one of their priorities, I think, is they want the player base to have fun. They want them to have a good time. They're not thinking about deck diversity or really anything else. It's fun. It's fun that players are about to have. Which is
another reason I think they want to stay away from the banning or restricting, makes it to where, all right, well, now the people who even like this card a little bit, even after the errata, right? Because it's still playable. It's just now
it's
different.
Not. I would say it's not because
Sorry.
I would
I'm
say
not talking competitively. I'm just saying, like, it's still a thing do.
It's still able to be played.
Exactly. So it's like the people that still might even want to utilize it can. Yes, it's not nearly as good as it was. They have to
jump through, and I would argue no.
I know.
I would argue no, just because they have to jump through a whole lot more hoops.
Right, but I'm more so saying, like, if they want to make it to where, certain things are not fun and trying to get rid of that, like, going for a ban list is also not fun.
Yeah, then we have to talk about percentages. You have to talk about percentages of people who are losing out on the fun that they're looking to have, and then the percentages of people who are now having more fun because of said ban or errata, right? Yeah. And this is literally the conversations that you have when you're talking about bans and restricted. Like when you're talking BNRs, like that's literally what you're doing. And erratas or whatever it is. You are weighing potential like fun and unfun moments if that's your goal. Right, you have to think about fun that you're adding and then fun that you're taking away from what percentage of the player base.
They also didn't have to hit Bucky that hard.
No.
Dude, that was a hit, dude. Wow.
Yeah, dude. Well, they turned it from a 2-drop to a 3-drop, right?
I don't remember.
I honestly can't. That's the thing. Like I can't even remember. What's that?
I said I didn't remember that they changed.
They changed the cost.
They made it to where it's like you had to actually shift a card now to then get the effect.
They did that too. They changed the cost.
And then they get rid of Ward as well.
I don't know if they got rid of Ward. I can't remember.
I'm like, they destroyed this card.
I know.
I understand. But it's still
so many different
technically
things,
playable for the people that just want to play Bucky.
Correct.
Correct.
But it's so difficult to now even play with it because of the added if you only get his effect if you shifted the character.
Yes.
Like it's so bad. It's just they killed him.
It's rough.
It was so bad. So anyway, I don't even know where I was. Yeah. So again, I think up to this point, it's pretty clear by everything that Ravensburger has done and is doing that fun for their player base is important to them. So the Rule 0 conversation, a lot of the time, is the perfect place to weed out those potential feels bad moments. In those discussions, you have the deck discussions, power level discussions, what you're looking to do. We're not having any conversations now, and with the way that this game goes, I really don't think you're ever going to have a infinite combo, right? The only thing that I can think of that's a potential infinite combo is Beast. green beast. I can't remember what Beast Relentless. There we go.
Yeah, Relentless.
That's the one. But that is so conditional. Like everything so far is just conditional.
Yeah, it's conditional. It's just a lot easier of a condition to achieve when playing in multiplayer.
True. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Obviously, the more players you have, then your percentages go way up. Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So by doing both of these things being maximizing fun and reducing the amount of feels bad in moments. So by doing those things, I think we're going to help to grow and evolve these types of formats and grow the game of Disney Lorcana as a whole. Okay. So honestly, I really think just having the Rule Zero conversation is going to be a net good for the game. I mean, we talked last week about how important the growth and even the health of the game is outside of the competitive OP structure and competitive formats. Okay. All right. So we've talked about what the Rule Zero conversation is. We talked about the social contract, and then we talked about why it's important. Okay. So now I want to talk about some applications. Okay. We're a year in, and we've had some comments on some videos about like what types of cards would be, good to throw in like a competitive deck or a casual deck, or like what types of cards you could have discussions around. So we'll talk about a few of them and give some quick thoughts. Okay. Because I think it's important to apply this already, right? Because it's one thing to know that you need to have the conversation. I do think it's another thing to understand what that conversation looks like. Because if you've never had the conversation, you'd be lost, right? You're not sure what questions to ask or what answers to give. So we want to help provide some of that information. So now the quick disclaimer, we talked about game's a year old. If you go into the Disney Lorcana app, it shows 1,193 cards.
It's so adorable. That's a cute
right.
number.
You know how small that is? I did not look up Magic. I did not look up because that's hundreds of. I mean, there's millions of cards. There's millions of cards. For Lorcana to have 1,000, and so this 1,193 that includes cards from the Gateway product, Illumineer's Quest, and all the promo cards. Yep. So the number of unique cards, meaning like if you have two different, like the Rapunzel Gifted with Healing, right? You have the standard, then you have the promo from the DLCs. Mm-hmm. You've got all those different ones. I think the number of unique cards is probably closer to 1,000. Because if you take 204 cards, which is the number of cards per set, 5 sets, that gives you 1,020 cards. That's so small. It's important to know it's small. So as the card pool grows, so will the decks, so will the archetypes, so will the strategies, and so much more. Personally, and Jim, I'm curious what one thing you're kind of really excited to see as the game grows. But for me, I think one of the biggest things that I'm really most excited to see is the different play styles and the different archetypes that are going to be born from the game. Because right now, there's not a lot. Like you have bounce control with Ruby Amethyst. You have Emerald Steel ping, Emerald Steel discard. You have a lot of different discard archetypes. There's a few archetypes. There's not a ton. But I'm excited to see as this game grows what different archetypes we're going to see be prevalent. If you could pick one thing that you're kind of most looking forward to see as the game grows, like what's at the top of your list?
I feel like most people can kind of guess what it is. Has nothing to do with the cards itself. It's always the people that are coming into the game and the people you meet. As the game grows, you're going to have more opportunities, more chances to be meeting more and more people. It's kind of weird. Honestly, I used to be a really big introvert. Right? I wasn't talking to a whole lot of people outside of my group.
Uh-huh.
Then sometimes a card game changes your life.
How many times does that happen?
Couple.
Couple, yeah. Yeah, so I'm really interested to see what more strategies we're going to get. And thus far with Azurite Sea, we've seen ink sinks, which is I love that term, by the way, ink sinks.
Ink sink.
It's basically something you can sink your resources into to pay for an effect. We've seen that on a couple cards. The new legendary Baymax looks very cool. So I'm really interested to see what other strategies we're going to get in this next set, if we're going to see any new strategies.
Okay. All right. I won't go out with that cop out answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You said it.
All right.
I'm literally thinking like cop out.
I do really want to see something to where you pay your own lore as a resource to get off an additional effect or a really crazy effect, whatever it is. So, since you have to pay lore, it could just be real good.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. Yeah. And I honestly think it's a foregone conclusion. I think it's a foregone conclusion they're going to do that at some point. Yeah, probably not for a while, but I think at some point they're going to do that. Yeah. And I think when we see that card, partly because there's a lot of new folks in the Lorcana community who've never played TCGs before, their mind is going to be like, and I think it'll be a polarizing thing. I think there's going to be people who will be like, "Oh, this is so bad," and then some people are going to be like, "Oh, this is so cool." And then once you get the card and you play with it, that's obvious. That's always the final test, right? Yeah. Is like how it performs in game. Yeah. So, I would bet on it right now that we're going to see it at some point. Yeah. I would be confident in betting we're going to see that at some point. So. All right. So all that being said, let's talk about some cards and like some archetypes that are going to be strong and then some that may not be so strong. So the first thing I want to talk about, removal. So with the card pool being extremely limited, removal options are also very limited right now. And the majority of the hard removal is in Ruby and Steel. What do we mean by hard removal? Jim, if you had to describe hard removal to somebody, how would you describe it?
You don't have to worry about a condition. And it, just kind of gets rid of it permanently. You don't have to worry about them being able to play it from their hand again or goes into their deck. Okay.
I would also say it doesn't go into their inkwell either.
Yeah. I can't utilize it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can utilize it if it goes into discard.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So, is Let It Go hard removal? Let It Go hard removal. I would say it's probably quasi hard removal.
I mean, it is. I actually would argue it is the hardest form of removal.
Yeah, that's actually
you're
true.
Ramping, but that's unless they're playing Mufasa to randomly get the card, it's not coming back.
Right. No, you're right.
So
you're right.
Yes, it is hard removal, but it's different. And do you really want to ramp your opponent?
Right.
No, but when they're already at say like 10 ink, to put that at 11 isn't really going to change the game much.
You never know. You never know. Like I see what you're saying, but
percentage wise, increasing them 10% versus if they were at 4 ink and you put them to 5, that's a bigger percentage.
Sure. Yeah. Percentage is correct. But if you have a 7 drop and then a 4 drop, you can now play both on that turn, right?
Yes.
And obviously, but what Jim's talking about is percentages, right? So for sure. So removal options being very limited. The majority of hard removal you're going to see in Ruby and Steel. Sapphire and Emerald also have some options now. And a lot of that is conditional, and it's also kind of a little bit different. Okay. Yeah. We just talked about Let It Go, right? And I do like Jim's description of it being the hardest removal right now, which I would tend to agree with, right? But as the card pool grows, so will all of these options. There is some amber removal, a little bit, but a lot of amber removal is also
conditional.
It's extremely conditional. It's based on conditional challenging. Okay. So if you're playing a lot of hard removal, your deck is probably going to be a bit stronger. Okay. Now, the big drawback with a lot of that right now is it's higher costed. So it's higher up on your curve. But again, right now, you're only the one who has access to it. Right.
Yep.
So that's
It's
something
a
to keep in
premium
mind.
price.
It is a premium price. So looking at some of these cards for Ruby Steel, Madame Medusa, love Madame Medusa.
So
again, and that is conditional, yes, but it's a super easy condition to meet. Lady Tremaine, also conditional, but again, a very easy condition to meet. Be King Undisputed, same thing with Lady Tremaine. Brawl, very good early game. Sisu, again, a little bit conditional. Dragonfire, not conditional at all. The only condition with Dragonfire is, hey, you have 5 ink that you can cast it with. Okay, I would argue Dragonfire actually is good in multiplayer because it's removal. Like, and that's why it's good. Like, this is a very different format than 1v1.
Yep.
There's a lot of other cards in red that do the same thing. Like 2 different Sisus. You got little Sisu, you got big Sisu. Talking about some steel cards. And then along came Zeus. Probably one of the best sources of direct damage in the game in steel, if you ask me. That's 5 damage to a character or location. Like, the fact that it can hit both is very, very good. It's very versatile. Grab your sword, fire the cannons. Triton's Decree. Triton's Decree, one of the best low drop sources of damage.
That card's good.
It's so good in multiplayer formats.
And you know what other card is extremely good in multiplayer? I mean, we don't have it on here, but Avalanche.
Yeah, Avalanche
it's like to grab your swords.
It's so
but
good.
Then it's also takes out a location on top of it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And you pick the location too.
Yes.
Right. So Ruby, if you are playing Ruby and Steel, your deck is already doing something that if they're not in those colors, they can't do. They cannot do them at all. And so Ruby, anything with Ruby and Steel in multiplayer formats, people are going to be looking to you to bail them out. 100% of the time, people are going to be looking to you. And I didn't even talk about this. Item removal. Guess what? What color has the most options for item removal? Steel. Steel has those options. Jim, how many times have we sat down and you've heard, all right, I hope whoever's playing Steel better be doing some item removal.
All the time, man.
All the time. And we'll talk about this when we talk about like how to build a multiplayer deck, because this is definitely something that you need to think about and talk about, but it's item removal. So you're playing Steel, include those cards. And again, you're playing Steel, you already have access to so many options that people who are in Steel just don't have those options. Okay. Okay. Sapphire and Emerald. There's only 3 cards written down here. We already talked about Let It Go. Okay. Hades is the same thing with Let It Go. And again, right now, they're very, very good because your opponent is most likely never going to see those cards again. Unless they're playing Mufasa and they get incredibly lucky, which Mufasa is just Mufasa is just an insane card, man. Dude, he's so good.
Monster.
And then there's Your Welcome. Your Welcome is not hard removal because that shuffles it into your opponent's deck, and then they get to draw 2 cards. So it works.
Which I don't like.
No, I don't like it either. But in a pinch, like if it's the end, if you're in the end game, it's perfect.
Yeah,
if you're in the end game,
Yzma effect.
Correct. It's Yzma. Yzma's another good one. Yzma's the same thing, but it gets the card off of the board. Which if you're in the end game, that's all you need is you need to get those pieces removed somehow, shape, or form. One card I didn't even talk about for Ruby, Maleficent, the big Maleficent. I remember, Jim, do you remember when we first saw Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon? And we were all like, dude, I don't know, man. This looks like a bad card. It costs 9. It's super high costed. And what do you think about it now, Jim?
It was what, 2 ink, 2 lore as well?
2 lore, 7.5, 7.52.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. What do you think about that card now, Jim?
I mean, I still love big dragons.
No, yeah.
Having
right.
the dragon fire effect anyway, because in multiplayer, you're most likely getting to that end game.
Yep. 100%.
Especially depending on the colors you're playing. You could be playing blue ruby.
Right. And especially if you're playing in a casual, a lower power level game.
Yep.
Right. Now, just because you have Maleficent doesn't necessarily mean you're in a higher power level game. But because, again, 9 cost, right?
Yep.
And if you're in red, you may not be looking to do a lot of ramping unless you're in blue-red. But if you're in blue-red, like, you could also be playing very competitively, right?
Yep.
But yeah, Maleficent, phenomenal card. Yeah, so Sapphire and Emerald, there's not a ton of options right now, but there's a few, and some of them are pretty good. Okay, and You're Welcome is brand new from Shimmering Skies, and it's a phenomenal card. Like, it is a very, very good card. One of my favorite things about it is I believe that's an uncommon. So I do love that.
I mean, discard is also destruction, hard removal.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a minute. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So the next thing I have, if your deck has a lot of direct removal options, it's probably at a higher level. Like, your deck is probably a higher power level. And I'm saying, like, a lot of options. Like, if you have a lot. Something to think about right now is, as we are 5 sets in now, there is only, Jim, how many board wipes are there? Like, actual board wipes.
Like full
board wipe.
Like, it has to be 2 strength or less.
Full board wipe.
1.
That is, if I were to tell you that a game, and you didn't know how long the game had been around, right? If I told you that the game only had 1 board wipe, what would be your first thought?
I'm playing that color. That's my first thought. I'm playing that
Jim,
color.
Correct. yeah. But that's a crazy thing to think about. That's a crazy thing to think about, right? And I'm excited to see the number of board wipes go up, and I'm excited to see what they're going to look like. I'm excited to see other colors get different options.
Yeah.
For board wipes,
we do have different cards with the board wipes.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a Jasmine that just got revealed.
Yes. And again, that is Milo Thatch, King of Atlantis.
On play.
If you shift.
Yes, on shift.
It's on play if you shift. So it's super conditional. And there's also Under the Sea. Again, very conditional.
Yeah.
And that is
like,
one-sided.
There's board wipes, but it's different. It's
Correct.
The whole board is gone.
Correct. And colloquially, when somebody says board wipe, that they mean Be Prepared is the only board wipe. Be Prepared is the only board wipe in the colloquial sense of a board wipe.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next point I want to talk about, Emerald Steel. Emerald Steel is a disgusting color combination to play against in multiplayer, especially when you're not prepared for it. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
There's a couple. Again, anytime you're an Emerald, you can go a couple.
Yeah.
Anytime you're an Emerald, you can go a few different ways. Right. You can go something that's heavy discard, which heavy discard is the next point we're going to talk about. Okay. But the reason I'm bringing up Emerald Steel is we just talked about all of the direct damage with Steel. You pair that up with Emerald, which also has access to a conditional board wipe in Prince Philip. Okay. And you're constantly pinging. And then when you have a card like, I don't know, Diablo, Devoted Herald, draw. It's a pretty disgusting color. And again, we're talking about the game being out for a year. Okay. The card pool is extremely small. There are so many very good cards in those colors that you just add up the number of players, you're just going to go crazy. I mean, Pack Tactics is in green. Pack Tactics is going to gain you lore on the condition that there's multiple characters on board with damage on them. And you're in Steel, so you're damaging all the characters.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who'd have
So
thought?
if you're not prepared for that, you're gonna get run over. Like you, that is, Jim. Do you agree with that? If you're not prepared for Emerald Steel, do you think
Yeah.
it's? Am I reaching to say you're gonna get run over?
I mean, 100%. If you don't have, any form of evasive characters to take out a Diablo, you don't have any form of spot removal to take it out.
Yeah.
No one has it. Is, by the time I get back to my turn, I'm drawing 4 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know this, resources are pretty important in a game like this.
Yep.
The more options you have, overall, the better you are.
Yep. Yeah.
And being able to see more cards, the color combination is just dirty.
It's dirty. It's dirty. And I'll admit, I love doing it. I'll do it once and then be like, all right, that was gross. I'm going to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're playing with people on a lower power level, essentially,
yeah,
they can't do it. They can't take it out. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Generally speaking, if you're shifting Diablo on turn 2, you're probably looking to play a higher power level game. Now, that's not always true, but I would say it's true 90% of the time. Because like Diablo, it's an insane card. It is an insane card in multiplayer formats. Okay.
It's one of the cards you have to answer. Otherwise, they snowball.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're just going to snowball. And it's just, it's crazy. Diablo Devoted Herald is an absolutely insane card in multiplayer formats. And there's no getting around it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing, let's talk about heavy discard decks. So if you're playing a heavy discard archetype deck, I mean, you are 100% looking to play a higher level competitive game and not a socially focused game. If you sit down at a table with me and you tell me, if we're having the Rule Zero conversation, I'm looking to play discard and I'm looking to make it to where you all have 0 cards in your hand and I have all the cards. I'm getting up and finding another table. Mm-hmm. Like most of the time, I'm not looking to play that type of game. Now, if I have a competitive deck and I want to sit down and play something competitive, then okay, like that's a different conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
But especially right now with where we are with multiplayer formats, nobody's looking to do that in multiplayer. They're not looking to be like, oh yeah, you're just going to discard me all my cards. It's not the it's just not what I'm looking to have happen when I sit down to play a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Right. And this is like this specific archetype is an interesting conversation to have, especially in how it relates to multiplayer, because again, I've said this before, because discard decks are 100% a legitimate archetype, 100%, totally legit for a competitive game. But if I'm looking to sit down and have a socially focused game and be like, hey, we're just here to have a good time. Mm-hmm. You're not looking to maximize the other people's time when you sit down and literally tell them, I want to have fun. I don't want you to have fun by taking all your cards.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my sorry not sorry hot take of the episode. And Jim, we've talked about it before, but like, I don't know what is your thoughts on this, on archetype or discard decks and how it relates to multiplayer?
If I actually had to pick between playing against discard and playing against lore drain, I'm 100% picking discard. 100%.
Okay, why?
Yes, they both extend the game like crazy.
Sure.
When you're also looking at the heavy lore drain decks, I mean, it's pretty much just in red. Like there's a little bit in purple, but it's
green.
Majority. Pardon?
Green has a lot of it.
Yeah, green as well. I'm just thinking about all the cards in red that just are drain effects, right?
Sure.
And it's on top of all the other craziness that red provides with its removal, its ability to control the board, on top of the ability to now control the lore totals. Mm-hmm. It's going to extend this game crazily. And I honestly don't feel too bad being in top deck mode, because also depending on the deck you're playing, most of the time you're going to have some form of way to be able to draw you more cards. Right.
Depends, but
right. Yeah.
If you're building your deck the right way, then yeah.
Yeah.
Then yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I'm not trying to build a one deck on power level. Right. So it's just, for me, yeah, discard is also very rough because, I have nothing in hand, that I don't really have a whole lot of options. It's just what I have on board. If I still have a board, along with what it is I'm playing off the top, and there's not really, I'm trying to save resources so I might have like 6 ink, and then I drew into a card that's a 7 cost. Oh, I'm going to try and be able to play it next turn. It's like, no, you're going to be losing that card. Ink it.
Yeah, right.
You got to get rid of it before they get rid of it, and then get value on top of that.
Right.
So
I would probably equate heavy discard decks and heavy lore drain decks probably in the same vein. Like those are probably in similar power levels. Which, like, again, go ahead.
I was going to say, which, just going off of my last sentence of, you can play around discard, once you have no cards in hand, because now they're not getting that extra value. They're not getting that value. Oh, your opponent discarded a card, I'm now going to draw a card.
Right.
Well, no, that's no longer happening anymore.
Right.
And, since you have so many discard effects, eventually those discard cards that you're drawing into are completely dead. That is no longer something I have to worry about, really.
Right.
It's like, yeah, sure, you can ink it, but okay, 1 for 1, my overall deck is going to be better than yours because I know exactly what your strategy is. And once I get these cards off the top, it's going to start changing.
The only difference between those archetypes and those strategies, and I'll just say strategies because, again, there's a difference between I'm building a deck all around discarding, like my opponent's discarding cards.
Yeah.
And also my opponent, I'm draining all my opponent's lore all the time. Like I'm including all of those cards. That's different between I'm going to include some cards that do those effects to get value myself. Perfect example with discarding Ursula's Trickery. Ursula's Trickery is if you're in green, that's not a bad card to have.
Play
That's 100% a perfect card to have. Okay. But with Lore Drain, I think Lore Drain effects are very nice to have, like a few cards that do those things, because that's a mechanic that I think is necessary to help put you in a better position to win the game. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a difference between including the strategy in your deck to help give you a better chance at winning versus I'm going to build my entire deck around Lore Drain, and that's all we're going to do. If you want to do that, that's fine. Like, go ahead. But you're probably not going to find people who are, I guarantee you, what's going to happen is if you sit down at a table, okay? Now, look, Rebecca 100% played this deck. She 100% played and the title of her deck, I kid you not, guys, was Lore for Me, but not for thee. If your deck is titled X for me, but not for you, bro, you're not looking to have a social good time. You are out to win, which is fine. I want to make sure I'm being very clear here. That's fine if you want to do that. And again, that's fun for you. Great. There will be people who are going to be like, I'm up for that challenge. Let's go. I'm into that. But if Rebecca with that deck sat down at a table and said, I'm playing mono red Lore Drain, and people know what that deck's going to do, there will be people, that's what they're going to do. They're just going to mow. Oh, no.
It's also turns it into an arch enemy thing. Three people are now going to be focusing down your board as much as possible.
Right. And in Disney Lorcana, playing arch enemy is difficult to do.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do because the game is so different. But it then it then brings in the political aspect a lot more as well. And it really brings another aspect into it, which is fun. It is 100% a fun thing. And like the politics game plays a huge part. It plays a huge part in it. And it's fun. Like it is very fun and really introduces you to new concepts and really just new ways of, problem solving, like how to get out of a jam, right? And learning to work with the table. Okay. So, it's, if your deck is something for me and not for you, that's you're looking to do something that people are just not going to be happy with.
Yeah. If you're going to do something like that, prepare for the consequences.
Yeah. Prepare for the consequences and prepare the table. That way they know and they can opt in. That way they can opt into it. So speaking of consequences, Jim, what are an example of some consequences that can happen when having these conversations and maybe not abiding by the social contract?
If it's going to affect the game along with the players who are there at the game as well. Yep. And, some stuff might happen where, things get turned on you a whole lot as well. Like we were just talking about what essentially turns into arch enemy, but it could also be if you're looking for people to play the game with, but word gets out that exactly how it is you're being at the table, at the game, people aren't really going to want to play this game with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So if you're now here to have essentially a social event playing this game, that's going to turn into a real lonely corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the place you're going to feel it the most is most likely your LGS. Like if you go to your local game store and you play multiplayer and people know what kind of player you are, I just prepare yourself. Like prepare
You're
yourself.
There every week. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of poop talking.
Yep. I'll admit, like I've had many negative reactions when I've lost in the past. Again, like it's plenty public. It's plenty public on a lot of games. And I'm at the point now where I've laughed it off, right? But like if you're in a social setting, don't act like that. I tell my son all the time, like my son is a little version of me. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and my wife and I try to teach him like, hey buddy, you really need to have a good attitude, because if you lose and you don't have a good time and you show it to everybody and you yell and scream, you're not going to have friends. People are not going to want to play with you because of your bad attitude. So the same thing applies to you, Lorcana player.
and Dan and I have talked back and forth a lot, about the whole me playing mono blue in Magic the Gathering. Mm-hmm. It's yes, I am essentially that player, and a lot of people instantly, as soon as they hear it, they instantly will give me a bad rep. But when we are playing the game, it is drastically different how I'm being in the game versus what you are expecting me to be in this game.
Yeah.
Obviously until it's like the final two, where if it's Dan and I, it's a completely different ball game. There are no politics. This is me versus you.
It's no holds barred. It's no holds barred, right?
Yeah.
But again, like in talking about the Magic concept, if you don't want to sit down at a game and you don't want there to be counterspell after counterspell after counterspell, like I know I don't like that feeling. I know that feeling, and I know with Jim it's different. Because like it's something I've experienced many, many times.
I mean, I've had this deck for a bunch of years.
Yeah, right. But sitting down with you to play that is very different from sitting down at a Magic Con or a Command Fest and sitting down with somebody else who's just playing mono blue Talrand, right? Yeah. It's very, very different. And again, I know what it feels like. Play a spell counter, play a spell counter, play a spell. Because if they have the counter, they're most likely going to play it. Yeah. Most likely going to play it. And that's not a fun feeling. Like I know, I get it, I understand. And that's probably what you're thinking when you sit down, with somebody like Jim who's going to play mono blue. Yeah. But it's very important to know to realize how you're reacting, okay? Especially when you're in that small group setting that you're at every single week, right? If you're looking to make friends and then start up a play group and then say, hey, why don't y'all come to my house? If you are the player who you cheat or you make it so people don't have a good time, you will be ostracized. You will be ostracized. And if you're not playing in league, people are just going to be like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't want to play.
Yep.
So be prepared. Like, seriously, prepare yourself for that. Okay. So, and I think this is an important discussion to have, especially as it relates to Disney Lorcana, primarily because of the IP and the community that a Disney game is looking to have. Like, it's very, very different from communities like Magic the Gathering, like Flesh and Blood. Very, very different, where the IP itself is more targeted to adults or young adults. Okay. Disney Lorcana is not. Like, the properties involved are for younger kids, and that is why I enjoy that, because I'm able to get my kids involved. So, especially when you show up to your LGS and there's kids, understand that and realize it. And so, like, seriously, like, it's an important thing. And honestly, as adults, as a parent, like, I know I have that responsibility to be that good example. And my wife tells me this all the time, because, I feel like I fail every single day. And I gotta be better every single day. So I think it's good to take that same philosophy to this game, especially if you're a vet.
We all fail every single day.
True. True. It's good to realize that. It's good to realize that, because then if you don't, then you're not going to get better. Right. Yeah. So, like, if you're a veteran, it's good to realize that, and then, help your local community grow. So, all right, I'm going to get off my high horse now. Yeah, I'm going to get off my soapbox. That's what I meant. My soapbox. Sorry. So anyway, all right. So that about wraps up the episode for today. Talking about Rule Zero conversation, what it is, why it's important. Again, if you're interested in the history of social contracts and how it relates to government, be sure to check the link down below in the description. We'll be sure to post those. It's really interesting. Like, if it's something you're into, definitely go check it out. Excuse me. And then we touched on some applications, which I think for now is a good thing to understand and realize. So with that out of the way, Jim, I want to kick it to you, man. Uh-oh. Kick it to you. With everything that we talked about, is there anything else that you want to leave with the audience? Something that you want to make sure that you get through to them? As we talk about Rule Zero, these conversations really, and the consequences. What's one thing you really want to leave with our audience?
Oh man, I don't know if I can stress it enough, right? These games are here to bring people together. So please do not be the person to cause another person to want to essentially give up and never play this game again. Mm-hmm. Don't be that person. Mm-hmm. You can still be the person with the deck, but there are other ways you're able to spin it, because we have had discard players on the channel before, but it was a blast playing with her. I believe it was the Forbidden Mountain people.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Melissa? Was that it?
Melissa.
Phenomenal player.
Uh-huh.
We would 100% have her back on, and she played a discard deck.
Now, when this goes live, okay, the most recent Multiplayer Madness episode was with RMB and Humble. And RMB, in his intro, literally said, I'm looking to make sure that all my opponents have no cards in hand, and I have all the cards in hand. And look at how well that turned out for him, huh?
Yep.
But for real, though, we went into that episode mentally preparing ourselves like, all right, dude, this is going to be one of those games. This is going to be one of those games. If that's what he's looking to do, okay, like, we are going to be
ready.
We were going to be laser focused to take him out. Right. And again, you're not taking somebody out in Lorcana. It's very, very different. Right. But
you're just slowing them down.
Right. That is where our focus was. Okay. And I think Jafar might have done that. I think Jafar slowed him down a little bit. I think that was one of our.
Who would have thought Steel was good at slowing people down? Who would have thought?
and speeding himself up.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
what about yourself, Dan? What do you want to leave the people with?
What do I want to leave the people with? So okay, real quick, I want to. You mentioned not wanting to be people to leave. So let's see. Last week I participated in my first set championships of the season. Okay, I was playing Ruby Amethyst because it's the deck I'm most comfortable with. It was a late night. What's that?
Phenomenal deck.
Oh yeah, so it's so good. I didn't have a good night. I went 1-4. It was Swiss. I should have just 0-2 dropped. Is what I should have done. Is what I literally should have done.
0-2 drop.
That's what I should have done because it started at 10 o'clock at night. So, and again, if you're part of our Patreon, you know this because I left an update for our Patreon community. So anyway, I went 1-4. Okay. First round, red blue. I was happy to play red blue because that's normally a good matchup for me. I could not draw the cards I needed to draw. And in that matchup, it's important to get the advantage first. You have to be the beatdown. And I couldn't find my aggro cards. I could not. I found all my high drop stuff. So lost that one. I was like, all right, 0-1. Let's go to round 2. Round 2, Amber Steel Song. Amber Steel Song. A rough matchup. There was one point in one of the games I had to get rid of 3 of my Be Prepareds. And it was I drew into 2 of them in a row on like turn 3 or 4. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I played a full play set of B preps. I had to get rid of all of them. There's another rough matchup. So I dropped 0-2. I'm like, all right, I doubt I'm going to be able to make top cut now. And Amber Steel is a rough matchup for Ruby Amethyst to begin with. Okay. So I went into round 3, which was Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro. I dropped that in 3. In that game, I won game 1. In game 2, I lost because on turn 2, my opponent saw 3 Daisy Ducks. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So I lost that. And Hyper Aggro it's a tougher matchup. It's not unwinnable. But again, I felt like my deck did not like me that night. It was rough. But it was good. It was good. It was good to play it. Round 4, I won. And round 5, I lost. Round 5 was against another Hyper Aggro deck. And again, I saw 3 Daisy Ducks on turn 2. I was like, are you kidding me? So I was extremely frustrated. And the guys I was obviously at the lower tables because I was losing, right? But the guys next to me were like, oh, like they could tell it was bad. It was bad breaks, bad breaks and bad beats. I'm like, oh man. And so on the last game, I was so frustrated because the chances that I see 3 Daisy Ducks on turn 2 in 2 different games, like the chances that happens is extremely low. So I was like, are you kidding me? So I was upset. I was just really upset. And it was nothing against my opponent. My opponent did what the deck needed to do. He won, he did his job. I was just frustrated at the night that I was having. And so the guy literally said to me, I felt a little bad. But again, I wasn't upset at the guy. It wasn't his fault. But the guy was like, hey man, it was my first win. At least let me have it. I'm like, and I was like, I step back and I'm like, good job. Like seriously, congrats. Well done. But this is just not my night. And I went through, all my decks, but he also didn't have a good night either. Right. Because that was his first to win. Yeah. So, But yeah, like the other guys sitting next to me were like, they saw the other games too. And so like, yeah, man, that's just rough. That is just a rough night for you.
The part that's weird to me about that is he's like, you know, at least be happy for me. It's finally my first win of the night. And Dan's like, yeah, but I'm 0-4, dude. Like, how am I supposed to be happy right now? Be like,
Yeah.
how about you show some compassion for a dude who's 0-4? Okay.
No, like, but when he said that, I literally was like,
yeah,
like I tried telling him, I'm like, seriously, like, good job, man. Like, I'm happy you won. And then I was after that, I was just explaining, look, I'm not upset with you. You did what you needed to do, man. Like, you were doing what your deck needed to do. It's just, I just had a very rough night, and that's why I'm frustrated. I ain't frustrated with you. I'm frustrated with my dumb deck.
yeah, not even good.
So I at least got that first set champs out of the way, and it was rough. So so that happened. But what I want to leave you with, don't be that, right? I can obviously empathize when stuff like that happens, but those moments are going to be a lot less. They're not going to happen as much in multiplayer formats, right? Because again, if I'm sitting down to play a competitive game, all I'm thinking about is my line and how I can win, right? If I'm sitting down to play multiplayer, I'm really thinking about maximizing the amount of fun that the table's going to have. Obviously, I want to win. Everybody wants to win, but it's a different environment. So understand the environment you're in and play to that. All right. If you're in a competitive environment, you lose, take it in stride, learn from it. As I left that venue, I was driving home at like 3:00 in the morning. And I'm like, all right, so let me take stock in what happened and what could I have done to win? To be honest, I could not remember because it was 3:00 in the morning. But it really was there. It was bad beats from matchups and just unable to draw what I needed to. I really thought a lot of my lines were okay. I think there was maybe one line in the Amber Steel matchup that I could have done differently, but I think everything else, I think my lines were pretty much on point. It was just bad beats through the night, and that happens. That's RNG. Yeah. The RNG was not with me that night. That's what it is. Okay, but it is important to learn from your mistakes. So yeah, realize that, understand that, have a good time, make sure everybody else is having a good time. So that's what I want to leave you with. But with that, we're going to kick it to you guys. What do you all think? Okay. Have you heard of the social contract before? Have you heard of the Rule Zero conversation? Have you had it before? What has it looked like in the past? Let us know down below in the description. And if you want to join the conversation, be sure to join our Discord. Our Discord is free and open to anybody who wants to join. Link down below in the description of the video or the podcast description. And speaking of the Discord, if you want to be one of our premium members, have access to some special chats. We have, don't forget, you can sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/hobbies and happiness. You can support us financially there if you so choose at different levels. And depending on the level that you are in, you get a private chat in our Discord. And honestly, that's where we interact the most with our community, is in those chats for our patrons. It's a lot of fun. And what's best is if you are a part of our legendary tier, you have access to a private live stream every single month where we just sit, chat, hang out, have a good time with our legendary patrons, letting you all know what's happening behind the scenes. So if you want to learn more about how you can support us financially, head over to patreon.com/hobbies and happiness. And again, you're watching on YouTube. Don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on bell notifications so you can be notified when we release more Disney Lorcana content in the future. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, don't forget, hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when we release more episodes every single Monday on the show. So again, every Monday, new episode of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, a Disney Lorcana podcast. If you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, there's a lot of different ones. Just whichever one you like, hit the plus button. Plus. plus H. Hit the plus button. There you go. All right. Well, big thanks again to our patrons. Thank you, Jim. This was a lot of fun. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about next week, but be sure, be back here next week. And we will see y'all real soon.